You're a man that controls his own destiny. A man that is always in the pursuit of being better. You are in the right place. You are responsible. You are strong. You are a leader. You are a force for good. Gentlemen, you are the Alpha, and this is the Alpha Quorum.
So talk about that dog program a little bit, because that whole thing just fascinates me. Not just that you did that and that you had a leadership role in some of that stuff, but talk about all aspects of it. But work with the dogs themselves. We talked about like Cesar Milan when I was out there with you a few weeks ago, and that I've actually had husbands and wives, they're in here for couples counseling. And I'm telling them, go and watch 6 episodes of The Dog Whisperer and see what how do you apply any of that to yourselves? I'm just fascinated by that whole thing, the dog part themselves, how some of the stories that you told about that. So just, man, dig into that dog program and whatever you call that.
Yeah, it's called PAWS. And it was an acronym. I didn't come up with it. Like, PAWS is cool. But it was it's kind of janky, I think, but paroling animals with skills. And and it was a really cool program. It gave me purpose because, like, at this point in the journey, my head's starting to come back on straight. I'm still crushing it on the fitness level. Which was another cool benefit. Like, we made a benefit of if you're in the dog program, you're working all the time. And so you miss all the good workout spots. Well, in prison, they do count time multiple times a day and everybody has to bunk up for an hour. Well, we made a deal with the commanding officers, the sergeants and stuff, that dog guys get to work out during count time. So that was really cool. And, then we started getting other benefits, like you could have your family send in shoes like Nikes, or whatever, instead of institution shoes. And we were kind of winging it at first. There wasn't really bylaws. I mean, there were some rules and there was some shit. And then I'm working out one day. I'm like, this is fucking cool. I'm out here by myself. No one's on the yard. Like, I don't hear keys. I don't hear nothing. Like, it's quiet. And my dog is just sleeping under a tree. I was like, this could be like, we could turn this into a business. And then that was the first time that I had like an entrepreneurial thought in like 4 years, and so I'm sitting there hitting the weights, and within 45 minutes, or in the last 45 minutes of my workout session, I was like, dude, we're going to turn this into like a real program where we get like 60 freaking dudes, and we're going to change their life, and we're going to set up contracts with all of the pit bull rescue places. And I go back inside, I shower up, I grab my dog, go outside, and I run into Sarge, and I pitch him like a rough idea. I was like, hey, so this is my vision of like what we could do right here. And he's kind of stoic. He's cool, you know what I mean? But he's like, and he really liked me, but I don't know, I didn't know it at the time, like, because he's just emotionless. He's been a cop for 25 years. But he was like, oh, sounds good. Write up a proposal, and I want it in an hour. So I wrote up this proposal, and 6 months later, we had like 60 dudes in this program. We had blue shirts, blue hats. We were the only facility in the entire IDOC system that could wear shorts, cargo shorts. They ordered in cargo shorts for us so we could put treats in the pockets and whatever. And like, they gave us a lot of benefits, but it was hard to be in the program because, especially with someone like me running it, because I'm a workaholic. And so I stopped working out, and I started pushing so hard on this dog thing that, I mean, I got us into canine behaviorists, college courses. And I was making my dudes, if you wanted to be a dog guy, if you wanted to be a PAWS member, you're taking 2 or 3 different classes a day, or not a day, a week. And if you don't have a GED, you're going to be in the school with me studying. And um, as a result of that, I helped 63 dudes get their GEDs.
Wow.
Right now on Facebook, I've got like 20 friends that are in college that are previous dog guys that got out of prison and went to college because they got their GED, and they learned so much in our class, or in our classes, like crucial conversations and confrontations, and all of the little groups that I put together and built curriculum off of other books. Those dudes loved learning so much, and they got their GEDs because of that, that they're now in college. You know what I mean? And, there's a lot of cool benefits that came from it. But for me personally, the biggest thing I took away from that is, it kind of got me back into a leadership role, and like started exercising my leadership muscles and stuff that I previously, was using. And I was able to teach people what I had learned over the years about being a team member, being a leader. I've educated myself a lot on like a lot of different psychological things.
Yeah.
And so, I used a lot of that. I learned it. And then the dude at the school who ran the school, he let me on his personal computer. And I took like off the books kind of thing. I was taking classes and watching videos and reading shit about neuroscience, psychology, emotions, just absorbing all of this stuff so I could be a better leader in my dog program, so I could help these guys, because I knew that I was going to be there for a while, but I knew that a lot of these guys were getting out soon. And I wanted to do as much as I possibly could to show these guys that they can be better. Because some of these dudes have been using meth and heroin since they were like 9 years old. They don't know any better. They don't know any different. And so, I used a lot of that to help them. And the dogs themselves, like, they were damaged just as much as we were. We set up a contract with Boise Bully Breed Rescue out of Boise, and they only rescue the bully breed, English bulldogs, pit bulls, whatever. And these dogs were damaged, man, just as damaged, if not more so than some of the dudes that I was working with. And we had fight dogs from Fresno, California, from all over the place. And, we started taking classes on, a lot of different psychological classes, like Psych 101 and stuff. So we had a good idea of how the brain would work, how cortisol works, how dopamine and oxytocin works. And then we got it set up to where we could do canine behaviorists classes. And I went through and I finished that school. And so I became the guy who would work with the most damaged dogs. And a lot of the dogs that came through were cool, man. They were just strays or whatever. But we got 1 or 2 really bad ones with every batch of dogs we would get. We would get like 6 to 8 dogs per batch. And we structured the dog program into teams. There would be, 4 or 5 teams of, 3 or 4 dudes. And we had, in each team, there was a primary handler, a primary trainer, a secondary or 2 secondaries, and then an apprentice. And I would work with every team. Making sure that the primaries had all of the resources they needed to work on whatever it is their dog needed to work on. The dogs are easy. And just like Caesar says, man, like, I don't know if you know his story or not, but I mean, that dude's got a crazy story too. He came over the border illegally, and he started in the ghetto training dogs, and he knew right away when he first started working with dogs that it's not the dogs that are hard to train, it's the people who are handling the dogs. And I had heard him say that at one point somewhere, and I always kind of remembered that. And so I would go from team to team and train these guys or help these guys train their dogs. And along the journey, I was able to read the dog's emotions and empathize with what they were afraid of or what they were feeling. And so that helped me know what the dog needed, whether he needed, more assertiveness, or if he needed more compassion, or what it was. And it helped me balance out the therapeutic delivery of what I was doing. And so I taught these guys on how to do that. And then after, like, I don't know, 3 packs of dogs, I started coaching these guys on like how to apply that to themselves. I would tell the primaries, all right, it's your responsibility to make sure your team is successful. If your apprentice fails, you fail. And this is why, and go through like a leadership tutorial with them. And then I would go through and show them like, all right, well, if this dog is afraid of you when you move too fast because he's been physically abused, how can you apply that at home when you get home to your family? I mean, you need to be able to understand the damage that you've caused to these people and why they're afraid of you, or why, they don't trust you or whatever. And you need to appreciate that, and you need to work with it, not ignore it or be offended by it. If you raise your hand at a dog like this and they shy away from you or run away, don't be offended or whatever. Like, know that dog's been through some shit, and they don't know that you're about to hit them unless they've been hit. So if you do that to a dog, and they run away, the chances are there's 99% chance someone's hit the shit out of that dog. Mm. And when we get home, if you've got a bad rep with your parents and you ask your mom to borrow the car and she doesn't want to, don't be pissed at her. Just know that you did that. I mean, and that's just like a small example, but
seems like you're learning a lot when you're talking about, you're taking psychology classes, you're doing all these things to work with behavior, which you can apply also to your guys working there too, not just the dogs, but there's all this like cause and effect. There's all this understanding of cause and effect. And it's like, you see that this produces this in the dog, this kind of trauma or past treatment or whatever may produce this in the dog. These are the things that can help them out of it. That's what I'm picking up, that the insight that you gain working on like the behaviorism part of it or whatever is that there's a cause and an effect, and there's something that can reinforce behavior, and there's something that, it's all behaviorism. If you remember with Pavlov and the dogs, that's how some of those concepts about conditioning and such were created. But fascinating stuff about cause and effect.
Yeah, man. And what's that book? Atomic Habits. That's a good one. He talks about, he briefly mentions, Pavlov and the classical conditioning, but he really talks about operant conditioning, and so like with a dog, like, so let's say your dog goes and lays, your dog doesn't know the down command to lay down, right? First of all, dogs don't know English. And so if you just sit there and you say down, 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 and then they lay down and you give them a treat, now they think the command is down, 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 down. They don't know the one word. They know
string all that,
the series of events that led up to the treat. And that's their association with it. And so like if a dog lays down on its own and then you explode with excitement and give them a treat and love them and freak out, that was their reward, right? And they don't know that when they laid down, that's why they got the reward. But if you do it like 5 or 6 times, it's the reverse of the bell and the food, right? They know that if they lay down, they will get a treat. And then once they associate the behavior with the treat or the reward, then you name that behavior. And then once you apply a verbal cue to that behavior and you teach a dog how to learn through operant conditioning or classical conditioning, then now that they know how to learn and they have a base vocabulary, and it's purely positive. Now, I don't feel like purely positive training is the best training.
That's like a style or a language of training or something. Is that
it's a style of training, and that's what like PetSmart and shit pushes a lot. Dogs are not humans. They have emotions. They have neurotransmitters and all the same shit that we do, right? But it's very different. They are a couple of generations away from being feral. They have a lot of primal instincts that you have to be aware of, and humans don't like to be aware of that. They like to think that they're just like us, and you have to have a firm hand sometimes. You have to be compassionate sometimes. You have to know how to train or I guess in order to know how to train a dog, you have to command like a dog, and you have to exercise control, because dogs love control. They love structure. They love alpha. They love pack leader. They have a pack mentality no matter where you go. And you can take 15 stray dogs that are not violent, throw them in a room together, and within 5 minutes, there's going to be an alpha. There's going to be a pack, and they're going to start feeding on the others' behaviors. And my guys were the same way. Men are the same way, to a degree, right? And I don't think that necessarily everybody needs an alpha, like in a pack mentality, but you definitely have a tribe mentality. And so like with these dogs, you've got a group of trainers. They've just been uprooted from a beautiful place in Boise where they've been getting love from all these little women that are volunteering and playing with them and giving them everything they want. And they got uprooted and taken to a place that's pumping with testosterone and noise. And yeah, they're in the middle of the mountains. And so they got all this anxiety and all these other mental issues going on already. So now it's just a chaotic, change for them. And so now they've got 3 semi-burly dudes telling them what to do all the time, dragging them around. And if you don't hold yourself with confidence, if you don't exercise, your masculinity, the dog will not respect you. They will not listen to you. They will not, especially if you've got a pit bull that's been a fighter. They don't give two shits. They don't give a fuck what you think you are. And they'll let you know.
Talk about the body language or the carrying yourself with some confidence and stuff. What in terms of with dogs, what does that mean? Like, I was going through some of these videos of you with my sister's dogs up there, and I would just notice that you would just stand there sometimes and stare at the dog, and the dog is just like looking at you like this, just waiting, but you have this posture. Talk about the nonverbal or the, you said carrying yourself with confidence. What does that look like?
So I think what you're referring to is like, so with Bronco, he's young, right? He's a puppy. I don't know, he's like 8 months old, or maybe almost a year old. And so with dogs, so if you and I were in a room and you didn't know who I was, and I just sit there and stared at you like that for a minute, you start to feel weird. You're like, fuck you looking at, dude? And you ain't got nowhere to run to. You have nowhere to go. And I just keep staring. and eventually you're going to like snap into some primal instincts yourself, like fight, flight, or freeze. Like, and so when I do that with dogs, especially dogs that I haven't worked a whole lot with, I like to kind of gauge where they're at behaviorally and mentally. Like, is he going to want to play with me after I stare at him for X amount of time? Is he going to want to learn? Is he going to want to fight? What's he going to do? And when you posture with animals, whether it be horses or dogs, cats really don't give a shit. They're like narcissists. They don't. But when you posture with an animal who lives to be subordinate, right? And they love that role. So if you posture yourself with X amount of control and confidence and assertiveness, you will get better responses from. Typically, you will get better responses from a dog during commands rather than somebody like my mom. Maybe he's very sweet and soft and lovey and showing all this sympathy, and they will listen to me better than her because they know that I'm in control. They know that they will get whatever they want from her, but if I tell them to stop, they know to stop. And I've never hit the dog. I've never jerked on the leash. I've never abused them or gotten rough with them in any capacity. But when you assign value to certain words, so to dogs, just like with us, like you have to define words, right? And no should be one of the harshest words that you have. And in order to assign a super negative value to the word no, it depends on the dog. Sometimes you have to yell at the top of your lungs, no, or whatever, to associate that word. And eventually, no matter who says that word, they will stop whatever they're doing and they won't fuck with it. But if somebody that's very soft spoken yells no or says no softly, they'll push their boundary because, you know what I mean? They know that person isn't about shit. And I don't know. So you just have to, I don't know.
So they just feel the energy of it. They just hear your tone. They know, I don't know, they know you're a bigger person. Maybe you're saying how they would respect you more. They would listen to you more, be more obedient around you because of your energy, like what you're showing up as versus my sister, who's this super feminine. I mean, she's a boss now at her job and all that, but she's like very soft spoken, Southern, all that.
Oh yeah. Well, and yeah. And like you show up to boot camp and you've got a drill instructor, like, again, like David Goggins. And then you've got a drill instructor like Andy Dick, like who are you going to work harder for?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just like, I don't know. And when certain people speak to you, like sometimes, they're sleepers. Sometimes their looks can be deceiving and whatever. But in general, when you speak to somebody, when you're talking to a man or you're talking to, or if you're talking to somebody who's confident or somebody who like probably shouldn't fuck with on certain levels or whatever. And then sometimes you talk to dudes and, like, this dude's a pussy. Like, this dude is a pushover and, so. But it's how you carry yourself. It's how you demand respect without demanding it. If that makes sense.
So I took a class in college at Weber State, one of my favorite classes ever, called comparative psychology. And it compared the psychology of humans to animals. And it would talk about certain birds, they pick one mate and they have one mate their whole life and all these things that were similar to human behavior. But I swear we went to Yellowstone as a group. We looked at this wolf exhibit, and we were checking out these wolves and looking at their dominance behavior. A lot of that has to do with posturing, their bodies in relation to the other wolves. And it was just awesome to see. But in terms of just confidence, like when you say, if you're speaking to a man, what are the specific things? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but what are the specific things? It's probably going to be similar to how you got to be when you're around some aggressive pit. How do you be? How do you hold your body? What do you do with your voice? What do you do with your eyes? How does all that look?
So dogs are cool, man. So like, I don't know why this is. I don't know who figured it out, but it is a thing. So I'm very soft spoken. I don't have a loud voice. You can tell when I'm being firm, but like it's very soft or it's very quiet. But one of the things that I hated the most, dude, was in an apprenticeship, and I wrote this, like, so it's on me, and I went through it. Just because I wrote it didn't mean I wasn't going to go through it. But you had to have an imaginary dog, and in your apprentice group, and so you got this leash, and we have a circle, right? That we walk in a circle, and we're training our dogs, and we stop and we say sit, and my imaginary dog's name was Tommy, and one of the things that you have to do so dogs are driven to distraction, right? And especially up there where there's deer and shit walking around and the dogs can see them, like you're going to lose the focus of 95% of these dudes right away because their prey drive kicks in and they want to go. And so one of the things that we implemented was a high girly voice. Like you have to talk to your dog and get your dog's attention by being like going full blown retard if you have to, screaming and whooping and hollering and have girly voices. And then when you say sit, you have to say sit in a high pitch, but with a girly voice basically. It's, I don't know why dogs respond to that, but they respond to that in a like fun, positive way. And it's kind of like with kids, man, like you have to balance your firmness and your silliness. What do they say on training day? Is smiles and cries. You gotta balance. And so with these pits that are just, some of these dudes are ad seg pits. I've had some dudes that were segregated from the other dogs because all they wanted to do the whole time was fight. And, they're missing teeth and shit because they've lost them over the years of fighting. And with those dudes, you have to be rough. You have to be so assertive that it almost sounds like you're being mean. Sometimes we would get complaints because some weenie ass dude would go tell the cop, hey, they're being mean to that dog, da da da. And the COs were cool up there. They're backwoods, small town dudes. They're like, well, go tell them. Like, if you got a problem with it, go ask them about it. And then honestly, we probably got 20% of our dudes that way. They would come jam us up and say, hey, why are you being mean to that dog? Like, here, go sign a waiver and I'll let you do it if you can do better. And yeah, we got dudes dogs would just kick their ass. Start biting the leash and running from them and barking at them. And then they realize real quick, you can't talk to this dog like he's a 2-year-old little girl. Like, this is a mature male that has done nothing but gang bang and fight his whole life, like this dude is not a punk. And this is, and so, with the confidence, squared shoulders, in my mind anyways. And you can see it with Caesar too. You see it with his Caesar 911. He'll tell you, hey, don't limp wrist it. Like, you got to hold the lead. You got to square your shoulders. You got to talk to that dude. Like, you got to tell him, let him know who's in control, who's in charge. And it's really cool watching him do it because I see a lot of the same. So I'd never seen a video with him before until I got out this time.
Okay.
I'd heard him talk. I'd read some of his books, like during the dog program, but I'd never seen a show with that dude. And it was really cool seeing that we were doing it right, because a lot of the lessons that we were teaching, this dude is doing. And like, thank God it was kind of like an attaboy in a way. It was like, I was like, oof, I did it right.
Affirming what you were already doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then there's other dogs that you can't be rough at all with. There's dogs that are so mentally and physically abused. They have such deep rooted PTSD that you shut a door too hard and they'll piss themselves and run away. And so if you get too firm with them, they'll shut down and then they're going to snap into fight or flight, because they don't really have a freeze most of the time. And if they can't run, then they're gonna attack you. And I've been bitten a few times, which is fine. Like, it's most of the time it's with kind of what we're talking about. Dogs communicate very differently than we do with each other. And if you have a dog and you insert them into a pack of dudes, their family, their pack is now 4 humans, and the primary trainer is the alpha, and they are a subordinate like the other 3 humans. And so when this dog is living with these humans, they know that they're in a pack, and if you do something to piss them off, you have to watch their micro gestures very closely, as they do ours. And I can get into that in a second, but if they don't have a very, very noticeable warning, like, hey, stop fucking with me, I'm going to bite you, then you're probably going to get bit. Because some dogs will just look at you a certain way and then go back to what they were doing. And if you try and correct them again, they're going to correct you by snapping at you. They can't tell you, hey, back the fuck up. They're going to give you a micro gesture, whatever their micro gesture is, and then they're going to bite you. Or some of them might bark first and then bite you or whatever, but they're not trying to inflict pain. They're trying to tell you to go away most of the time. And so we are kind of the same way. My dudes are the same way. Like, some of these guys have micro gestures. Like, some of them will say, hey, stop screwing with me, dude, or we're going to go to the bathroom and handle it, some dudes might just let it build up until they hit somebody. Or some dudes might relapse, whatever it is. But, with these dogs, we did a class on micro gestures that one of the staff members there facilitated. I don't remember the guy's name that really spearheaded the research and stuff into micro gestures, but it was really, really cool. And if you work with dogs long enough, you'll start to be open, or you'll start to recognize like how they furrow their brow or how they sit or whatever. Like, you spend enough time with a dog, you'll know like when he's going to take a shit or whatever, just by some of the small little behaviorisms that he has. So,
So
a lot of that.
did you say you would live with those dogs? Like, did you?
Yeah.
They would be in your your cell or whatever. Like, wherever you slept, they were sleeping.
Yeah. So we had 2 7-man cells, right? They were just big, long rectangle rooms with some pretty cool bunk beds. They were made out of wood. They had a dresser drawer. They had 3 dresser drawers, which was cool. I was at a minimum custody facility. It was a firefighting camp. Plus, we were the city of Orofino's like maintenance guys and lawn care guys and stuff. Plus, we did trails, and trails is where you take a group of dudes up into the mountains and they cut down trees and create the hiking trails in the mountains for the state of Idaho.
Oh, wow.
And so that was pretty cool. Plus, we did road crew and stuff. So it was a work camp. And that was another reason why we had so many people on teams, because if there was a fire, they would call out the firefighters, and then they had 3 other dudes on the team to handle the dog while the primary was absent or whatever. And so But yeah, so sorry, what was your original question?
The dogs lived with you in your cell or
Oh
whatever.
yeah. So one of the dudes there, he maintained the chainsaws and stuff for the firefighters. And he and I built these bunk beds. And we built them custom so the kennels could fit underneath the primary trainer's bed. And so the dog was with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yeah, and it depended on who you were. I mean, some guys like to kennel train them and leave them in their crate, but we would, one of the things that we would do with primary trainers is I would teach a leadership class and tell them, all right, you have this living thing that you're responsible for 8 weeks, and you have all the resources you need. If you absolutely need something, you come to somebody on leadership or a staff member and we'll take care of the dog if you need that. But this is your responsibility. You have to feed them, water them, take them to the bathroom, on top of training them, doing your classes, doing your job, going to work in the city and whatever. And so I got a bunch of little whiteboards and screwed them to the end of the beds. I was like, you have to make a potty schedule. You have to make a feeding schedule. You can't overfeed these dogs. You can't underfeed the dogs. You have to track every single thing this dog does. You have to inspect its shit. You have to make sure he doesn't get worms. You have to make sure, he's peeing. I want you to keep track of how many times he drinks, how many times he pees, how many pieces of kibble he eats. And we did. So we didn't just feed our dogs out of bowls. They had to earn every kibble that they ate. And so they get there, they don't eat right away because they're stressed. We might feed them a little bit for, the next day or two, but in small portions. And then I was starting on day 3. If they want to eat, they have to learn. And so if they, if you're teaching them their name, teaching them sit, whatever, that's how they earn their food. And that's the fastest way to get them to learn.
Wow. So you're just doing training all the day, and that's how they get their calories or whatever, is just from the little treats. I've seen that, like with your hand, you'll do something with your hand. You might not even have a treat in it, but the dog's following your hand because it knows there's the good stuff, and you're using your hands a lot in the it looks like you use your hands as a motion for the dog. He's looking for that treat.
Yeah. So I do that a lot with my hands, and I always make sure that I don't ghost them. So if I lure them, I always give them a reward. I don't lure them and don't give them shit because it's not cool. You know what I mean? Yeah, I do a lot of hand gestures. I teach every dog that I train. So I was talking about micro gestures. So like one of the things my mom does with sit is she'll do the okay thing with her hand like this. She'll say sit, and they know that means sit. But then she'll do some crazy shit, and she's down, sit, off, go. I'm like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And so then now when she does this, the dog just stares at her, and they don't know what to do. It used to mean sit, but now it just means confusion. Or, if you have your hand in your pocket and you offer, or you give the dog a nonverbal cue for down, whatever that is, if you raise your hand in the air for down and your hand's in your pocket, the dog will go down if that's how you taught him. And then one day, raise your hand in the air and your other hand's not in your pocket, he might not go down. Because that's not how he learned. And so when I'm using,
is definitely a big part of that consistency.
Yeah, definitely. And so when I'm using my hands a lot, I'm very aware of how I'm using them so I don't confuse the dogs.
So I'm curious more about the things you had to do to bond. So you bring these dogs in, and you talked about the beginning of the relationship, here's your dog, bro, and whatever. And I guess you would take turns and train, but what is the bonding process like? Because you got this wounded, what did you say, damaged, dog. Any of them were, and now you got to do something there. So what is the bonding, or what do you call that initial phase or whatever?
Yeah, so there's a bonding process. These dogs don't trust you when they come in. Some of them do. Some of them don't give a shit. Some of them are just happy-go-lucky and just love life. And being in the system for them has been life for them, just like it has been for some of those guys. And they've been in and out of kennels and probably other training programs in prisons and whatever. We don't know all their stories, and so, but most of them would come in and they're scared. And it's on the primary handler. It's up to them to establish a bond and a level of trust with these dogs. And it depends on the dog too. Like some dogs don't like Mexicans, some dogs don't like white dudes, some dogs don't like cops. Yeah. So, I mean, we've had cops get bitten before just because of their uniform. We've had black dudes get bitten before. It is what it is. We don't know their whole story. We just know what's on a piece of paper. We don't even know where that information came from. And so, and some of these dogs are coming from best friends, a lot of places in California. And you never know if you're going to get one of Michael Vick's old dogs. I mean, you just don't know. And so one of the things that I specialized in, on top of these dogs that suffered with, anxiety, depression, PTSD, was I specialized in teaching these men how to put their fucking bag of testosterone down for a minute and sit down with this dog and just love them. A lot of these dudes were trying to be hard with these cool looking pit bulls and shit. And it was kind of irritating sometimes because these dudes were like, "Hey, I want that dog. He looks cool as fuck." And he would get there because we would get like little bios on these dogs before they got there. And then leadership would read the personality bio, and then we would determine who to place them with. And sometimes these dudes would be stupid because these dogs would come in and they look badass. I mean, they're just built and they have cropped ears, and these guys would take these dogs and I would take them into the closed off room that we used for bonding. And I would tell them, like, "Look, man, this dog is not here to entertain you. He's not here to impress you. He's not here to do anything other than to heal. We're giving this dog a second chance at life. If he doesn't pass our tests, if he doesn't graduate our program, there's no guarantee that he's not going to be euthanized. So take this as serious as you take your parole date and get down on the floor, love on that dog, show him that he can trust you. We'll assert, dominance and control and structure and all that other shit later. But right now, the dog needs to know that you love him." And it's hard to describe a lot of it, because I'm a very in the moment kind of dude. Like, I could have a very deep, informative conversation with you and then forget everything I said the next day. Because I don't know if it's a short-term memory thing or if I'm just in the moment. And so when I'm teaching these dudes in the moment, I'm saying some profound shit, and I'm touching them on an emotional level that they've probably never even reached before.
Heard language like that. They've never had that kind of depth of just insight going on at the same time.
Yeah. And then sometimes I'll tell them, like, "Look, man, this bruiser right here, he has a heart, he has emotions, he has fears, he has needs, he has wants. I mean, he's just like you." And I'm talking to a gang member that's slung out with tattoos and he's got 6 stripes under his belt or whatever, you know what I mean? And I'm telling him, put that shit away and be a real man and show some love, empathy, sympathy, and compassion for this little guy. And know that, whenever you're down and out and behind closed doors and you're crying because your emotions are out of whack, and you need somebody, like this dude's in that position right now. And you don't have to talk about your feelings or anything. He doesn't give a fuck about what you have to say. He doesn't want to talk about his either. He just wants to know that you're there. And, we went through dudes pretty heavily. Like there's a pretty high turnover rate because people would get transferred to other facilities, or they would get out, or they would get rolled up because they did some dumb shit or whatever. And, the bonding experience is something that I did with every team member. I taught everybody how to do this. And it was always a one-on-one conversation. Now, I would also do group sessions where I would talk to all 60 of my dudes in a classroom and tell them, hey, I've had this conversation with each and every one of you individually. And so we're in a safe room where we could talk about this. Why is this dog still scared? Where is your team fucking up to where he doesn't feel safe with you right now? Have you been getting on the floor and laying with him and cuddling him? And has he been getting on your bed? Like, he needs to get on your bed and find solace in, being comfortable with you on your bed. Like, you need to make this dude know that he's appreciated and loved. And then we would move on to, the handler things like we've said before, confidence, control, structure, assertiveness, things like that. But that's where we start with the bond. Then once the dog is bonded with you, he trusts you. He trusts that you're not going to tell him to do something that's going to hurt him. He trusts that you're not going to take him somewhere where he's going to be, hurt or left or whatever. He knows that he can trust you to feed him and water him and bathe him. And, if he has a problem, that you will take care of it, because the primary handler is now the alpha. And then we would go through secondary handler bonding, which is similar, but we don't do it for as long because we want to make sure that he doesn't get confused on who the alpha is. And, my team, so I was in leadership, plus I had my own team. And sometimes I would have two teams at a time. Plus I trained staff dogs. And so I'm literally training 2 or 3 dogs a day, 7 days a week, and I'm working 18 hours a day, between training the 3 dogs on top of doing leadership stuff, on top of having a full-time job myself in the school. So I would start early, and my team would meet out at the training circle at 5:30 in the morning, and we would train as a team, and we would do lead exchange, which is, team member X puts the dog in a down position and then hands the lead over to another member of my team, and we continue the training circle, and we try and confuse the dog and generalize the dog. And then we would pull other members from other teams to come work with our dog in the training circle randomly. And
test of their skills, like you test them that way, like by introducing new people, that helps to test what their level is or whatever.
Right. And then if the dog's not doing it, then he's not being generalized, and we fucked up. We failed. And, we did AKC and CGC tests. CGC is the Canine Good Citizen test. And, there's 10 tests basically on there, coming one called, sitting down on command while staying in place, things like that. And one of the last tests on there, I don't remember if it's number 9 or number 10, but you leave your dog with a stranger that they've never met before, and the dog has to sit politely and respectfully while you leave for 5 minutes. So it's like, hey, can you train this dog to be able to have a stranger hold him at the convenience store while you run in and grab a soda? And will your dog sit there, or will he run to the end of the lead and freak out and bark and bite and whatever? And so, we really pushed that one pretty hard, because of how I taught these guys how to bond with dogs, plus how I bonded with dogs in general. There wasn't a team in there that had a dog that I wouldn't bond with harder than any of their primary handlers. And I would barely spend any time with them. It's just like almost like they could pick up on the vibes with me or something. Or maybe they saw that I was, almost in an alpha role of the whole thing. And they, because when we would do training circles, they were so large. You have 60 dudes out on this field with all these dogs, and all the dogs are walking in a circle. And I'm sitting there calling out at the top of my lungs, telling these guys what commands to call. So they'd be walking in a circle clockwise, and I would say, stop and down your dog. So they would stop, tell their dogs to down, and then they couldn't do anything until I said forward, or if I said, drop your lead, walk to the dog in front of you, and move forward or whatever. And it was a very strict training regimen. And so maybe the dogs picked up on that a lot. I don't know.
There's something emotional about this, man. This is like, you're talking about, the dog has to know that you love them. They're building trust. They feel, they don't, like you said, they don't care about your problems. They just want to feel you. And, you can show that in the way you touch them and the way you talk to them. You can, having them laying in your bed. I mean, there's so many ways that you're developing this healthy bond. I wonder how that you think that stuff applies to people, kids. We both have big families. I've got 6 kids too, and all different ages, but kids, people, your girlfriend, your wife, new coworkers. I mean, what does this stuff teach you about just people?
I don't know. And having a program like this in prison, it teaches you that people are still shitty. There's still some shitty people out there that, there's dudes that joined this program just so they could get some fucking Kobe's sent in, or whatever. There's dudes that joined the program just so they could have real coffee instead of dehydrated coffee, because it was one of the perks. We had a big ass 100-cup coffee maker, and you could have Black Rifle coffee sent in or whatever. That was a huge perk for some of the guys. But then there's also these people that are just so damaged, fucked up, and broken because they've never had somewhere to help them be better. They've never had a dude that is on the same side of the fence as them that says, you'll be fine. Stop being a shitty person, exercise your emotions, and balance out your emotions and the way you live your life, and you'll be fine. Some of those dudes have never heard shit like that. And, in training these dogs, like, it's very therapeutic for those of us that are fucked up on a level that like most people don't understand. And not because we're psychopaths or like severe narcissists or whatever, or bipolar or whatever, but like we're fucked up because we've had terrible pasts, we've made terrible decisions, and now we're in a terrible place and we don't know how to fix it because no one's giving us the tools or the resources to do so. And so for me, I was able to, I started using drugs after I was already developed mentally, man. And so like, I feel like that was a benefit to me to be able to bounce back. Right. Plus I was half-ass educated, and, I've always been kind of like a sponge for knowledge. And I think I've always been fairly aware emotionally when it comes to other people, like with empathy and stuff. And so like you take all those things and then a late blooming drug addiction that ended swiftly, and then apply the other education and stuff that I went through and some of the life lessons that I've learned. And I was able to put it all together when I saw myself healing because I was helping these dogs heal, and training dogs like Primo, which was my deaf shadow chasing bully, or training dogs like Lincoln, which was the scrapper from Fresno. or dogs like Weatherby, who suffered from abandonment and anxiety super bad. Those 3 dogs changed my life for sure. Primo, training him was so fucking frustrating.
This was one that was deaf and chased shadows.
Yeah, that son of a bitch. That dude kicked my ass up and down, dude. Like, it was my first dog, and I didn't know what I was doing. There was a fire. So the dudes who knew what they were doing were gone. And I had never trained dogs before this. So my experience was literally zero. And they're like, hey, by the way, since you're in leadership and you're kind of doing this and this, we're going to need you to take the deaf dog. I'm like, I'm scared, literally scared. I've seen that dog take off on some of the other dudes because he gets frustrated because he can't hear. And so with his frustration already up here, plus he's walking around seeing shadows. So his prey drive kicks in, his frustration's high, and he has a bad attitude. Holy shit, dude. Like, that dude snapped 3 leashes, like, not from pulling and breaking them, but he'll flip around. He's an English bulldog. He'd flip around when he would get frustrated with the handler for not letting him chase shadows. And he would attack the leash and chew through that son of a bitch and then take off. And so he taught me patience for sure. Because then at the end of the day, after that, he would just waddle up to you and he can't hear you. So he just wants you to love on him. He just wants to see you. And, where he's limited with his senses, his sensory overload is visual, right? And so, plus his handlers fucked him up with a laser. They thought it was funny to get him to chase lasers, and that's what really made it bad. But, or not his handler, but his previous owner. So yeah, he taught me patience, and I thought a lot about what it would be like to not have hearing. If I wasn't able to hear anymore, or if I were born that way, what would my life be like? And that was a huge catalyst into a lot of epiphanies and realizations of like my own life, my own my own emotions, and things I should have gratitude for, and what that poor little dude has dealt with. He's not a son of a bitch. He's broken physically and mentally, and he's just misunderstood a lot. He just like humans that have to go to these developmental workshops and stuff. And so he was really cool. Lincoln taught me a lot about anxiety and abandonment and fear. That is the toughest damn dog we've probably put out. One of the toughest. But he's also, to date, that I know of, the smartest. He got there and didn't know shit besides his name, and he left passing every test with flying colors. That dude was passing every test after week 2. And at 200 yards, I could give him a nonverbal cue, like a hand signal, to lay down, go from a sit to a down. Then I could recall him, and he would start coming to me at full speed, and then I would down him, and he would drop and slide. And then he would just sit there and wait for the next command. And, when he started, he was one of the most damaged dogs we'd ever gotten. And now he's performing these super crazy commands for everyone. And so that was really cool. He taught me, but he was very anxious, very abused, he was kind of an ADSEC dog. He couldn't be around other dogs for too long or he would start to fight. Which we broke him out of that. And then Weatherby taught me a lot about abandonment also, separation anxiety, codependency issues. And when I would see this in these dogs, I would start to reflect on myself. I would start to reflect on the literature that, I read or whatever. And once I would learn these lessons, I would journal it, and I would find key notes and key points and write them on the front of the journal. And that was another thing that we did with every dog is I made the primary handlers keep a daily journal for what they were doing with their dogs and what they would learn. And then the journal would then go with the dog to the new family. And so there's a list of commands. There's how we did it, how we taught them, how we fed them, how we were able to gain control over them, it literally was a diary, a 2 or 3 month diary of that dog's daily life in prison. And so I think that helped a lot of dudes too kind of reflect on themselves, because it did for me. And yeah.
Dude, I'm just so impressed, man. I can't even, it's just wild, man. I'm wondering how this, we'll wrap up here in a few minutes, but I'm wondering how that experience with these dogs changed you as a, leader of your house, leader of your household, family and kids and stuff like that. Like and I know you're in a little bit of transition. You've only been out of this program how long?
A month.
This dude's a month out.
Yeah.
There's I'm sure that a lot of this piecing things together and whatever now, but how do you carry yourself differently because of your work with dogs in the human world? And just overall, maybe we kind of wrap up with, what kind of man are you now? And how did prison help you get there? Where are you headed? So I guess the first question there was a lot of questions. How does these dogs affect how you are now with human beings around you in your own circle, your own little tribe, your own little pack?
So I think, I don't know, man. I think that it's not working with the dogs that's affected my relationship with my family or my people. It's working with those men, right? I am a far better leader today because of my experiences in prison than any TED Talk I've went to, than any business I've run or owned, than any John Maxwell book I've read. I'm a better leader today because of the hands-on experience I had in prison training dogs. I think my understanding of humans comes from my understanding of dogs. On top of like the psychology or the neuroscience crap, that's academics. That's basic foundation. I don't remember half the stuff I learned. I know that if I'm asked a direct question about it, I could probably spit out an answer. But knowing how the chemicals in the brain works, both in humans and in dogs, like I was able to become a better leader for the men and to become a better therapist for the animals. And crossing those two, it's almost like a therapeutic leader. I mean, if these men had hard days, they wouldn't go to just anyone. They would like typically come to me, like, "Hey man, my chick's cheating on me," or "Hey man, my mom died," or "Hey man, blah 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 blah. I'm fucking over it." Like, I'm like, "Well, that's cool. Be over it. There's literally nothing you can do about it. And if you can't change it, then change the way you fucking think about it. Because you're here with me. You could be in Boise and Max. You could be, you could be on the streets, but you fucked up, And like after having 1,000 of those conversations, after, being that dude in the prison behind a closed door that, hey, you confide in me with your issues, whether it be your internal demons or whatever you're facing on the streets or parole board coming up, or you just got flopped. The parole board said, "No, fuck you. You're going to spend another 5 years in there." you know, and having to talk these guys through all of those things, as well as training the dogs and understanding how those guys work. Because I look at them as children. I fix a lot of the things in these dogs, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me, but I see a lot of issues that those dogs have. I address it as if they're my kids, because the anxiety, the fear, the behavioral problems, those are all of the things that I want so badly to fix with my children because of the shitty 5 years that I've given them. 6 years now. And so, like I said, between the two, I come home now and I apply that to my daily life. I just sent not a mass text, but I texted individually almost everyone in my family throughout this week, letting them know, like, hey, I fucking love you, dude, and this is why. Or, hey, man, I'm just thinking about you, and this is why. And I never would have done that if not for that dog program, because I made a commitment in that program to say, hey, listen, all you fucking tough guys, I want you to write a quick little 2-liner gratitude thing to one dude in this program, one different dude in this program every week. I don't give a fuck who it is. I don't give a fuck what you say, as long as it's real, genuine gratitude. Let that dude know why he's doing good. His oxytocin is going to spike, his cortisol is going to drop, and so is yours. And if we're all getting one of those every week, and they're all legit positive affirmations, kind of like, and so little things like that I learned that I'm applying in my life now, and I'm genuine about it. I think that helps. I'm also doing really well with my daughters, like understanding like their behaviors. They haven't had a fair shake at shit either. And so me repairing my stuff from when I was a kid, on top of doing what I've done in prison, whether it be with the web team from not this last trip, but the trip before, or with the dog program, like I apply all the lessons learned out of those two experiences to my daily life now. And at work, I'm a better leader at work because of it. I think I'm more patient with people because of this. And as far as my addiction goes, I've learned that, a lot of people like the 12-step stuff. I've never liked it. Something has always told me, like, this is bullshit, man, because there's a lot of good core foundational stuff in there, a lot of good basis in there, but not for me. Like, I've always been very militaristic, very strict, very disciplined, very, like not cookie cutter, but like very compartmentalized, and like there is black and there is white, there is no gray. And I'm not as bad now, but I'm still kind of like that with recovery. And again, mainly for me, for my experiences. But, I was out of prison for an hour, and I went and talked to the police academy. I gave a speech down there. I was scared as hell. And we've talked about it a couple of times, but, after that speech, one of the things that I not realized, but like clarified with myself, was that I'm not an addict. I'm not in recovery. And I think that's the difference now that I didn't see before. And honestly, I came to this realization even after you and I spoke, after you went home. I am not identifying as a fucking tweaker. I'm not identifying as a dude who used to do meth. I don't remember which book I read this in, but it's something about two guys trying not to smoke anymore. And dude walks up to one of them and says, hey, you want a cigarette? And he's like, no, man, I'm trying to quit. Dude walks up to the other dude and says, hey, man, you need to smoke? And dude's like, no, I'm not a smoker. But those two dudes quit on the same day. Now, which one of those dudes do you think is going to make it? When you talk about probability and statistics and shit, one identifies as a smoker who's trying to stop it, one doesn't identify as a smoker at all. And he's completely changed his identity. And, when we have these behaviors that add up to who we are as people, when the 12 steppers say, relapse is part of recovery, that's bullshit. Like, that's a crutch, that's an excuse, and that's a way out. That's a backdoor. Fuck that. And I had never had that mindset before. I tried the 12 step, I tried LDS 12 step, I tried all sorts of shit. And every single one of those dudes that I was in any one of those with has fucking relapsed and they're back in prison or whatever, right? Including myself. And in that dog program, the biggest takeaway from that is one thing that I kind of coined was, if you can't change it, change the way you think about it. And don't identify as anything besides fucking excellent. I mean, and, I don't know. I'm with David Goggins. I'm with the Jocko Willink. I'm with all these dudes. I'm with you. I'm with, with all of these people that I've heard say these profound things, whether it be in short or in books or whatever. I definitely identify myself as in the top percentile, like, in the 1%. I don't give a fuck where I'm at, where I'm going. I'm going to be excellent at everything, and no one will outwork me. No one will be at the shop before me or leave after me. No one will, be able to knock me off my game and piss me off to the point where I lose my temper ever. Not so far anyways, except maybe myself. Like, and none of that comes from like a cocky standpoint or narcissistic kind of. No, I'm just like, I'm on my own trajectory. I'm on my own path, and no one can fuck with me. Even if I go back to prison for some dumb shit, whatever, it doesn't matter. If I have some stupid ass parole violation, it's not going to knock me down. Like, if I lose my job, whatever life throws at me, like, it's not going to slow me down at all or change my mindset or make me feel bad, or
you're not going to become a victim again. You're not going to live in that mindset. You got this new identity. I love what you're saying there, man. That's Eric Erickson, in the psychosocial stages. He talks about 12 to 18 is kind of the identity versus role confusion time. And that's where a lot of men who have trouble, that's part of it. And it could be trauma and different things, but you're talking about creating this new, identity. I don't know if you've heard any of the shows with Jimmy Durbin. He talks about, I think he used to go by Jim. I mean, that was what everybody called him, was Jim. And he changed his name to Jimmy. Or like Goggins talked about, he kind of had to create Goggins or whatever. And you're talking about creating this identity for yourself. That's nothing that you really were before. You kept some of your core, the parts of who you are in your nature, but you had to like design yourself. And that's awesome, man. I think there's a lot of men running around out there who they didn't have good experiences in that time of development. And so we're just like these dogs who are showing up, who need rehabilitation and who need to, they need to learn some trust, and they need to learn to obey, and they need to learn to work together with other dogs. This is Andy. This is just literally one of my favorite conversations ever, man. It's not just because you're a family member. Of course, I love you a lot, but to see what you're doing, to see how you're talking about yourself. I mean, I've spent a lot of time interviewing people and listening to people. We sat there on your mom's couch till 2 a.m. talking, and I could just tell that you were for real. And I love what you're saying about even in the future, you got some you got some scrutiny now, you know, being on paper, you got this scrutiny of everything that you do and whatever. And I just hope that you stay with that identity that you're going to just be excellent. You're going to do it, whatever you have to do the best you can. No one's going to outwork you. I've got some projects for you. If you guys start seeing a bunch of content show up, it's probably going to be Andy creating that for me. He's kind of, you seem to have the vision of what we're doing here, and you're representative of that. And so I'm going to send you some stuff, man. I'm going to send you a shirt. I think I might have a hat in here, sticker or two. And I'm actually going to send you this coin.
Oh, that's sick. That's it. So, dude,
the first one, I've never given one away. I only have one this size. I got them. I designed it myself. But I sent it to a lady in Lithuania who printed these and shipped them. The shipping was probably as much as I paid her. So anyway,
crazy.
On the front, it says, it's got the red 9, responsibility, resourcefulness, reverence, energy, engagement, endurance, discipline, discernment, and distinction. And on the back, there's a Latin phrase that I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but it basically says, improve yourself, not your excuses. And then
fucking cool.
at the bottom, animus actus and attributa. That means attitude, actions, and attributes. So I'm going to send this to you, man, just because you're just really, you're exactly what I want to, you're exactly the guy I want to be talking to, not just because made some pretty, earth-shattering changes in yourself and in your thinking, in your habits and your behavior and how you see other people, but also that you found the teacher in yourself. You've got this magician energy now, which is not just having specialized knowledge on a lot of topics, but you've shared that with other people. And that's what a magician does. Is a real magician, the archetypal magician, he's not like the street guy. He doesn't mind if you know his tricks. In fact, he wants you to know what they are. So you're a teacher. That's alpha right there. That you've got so many attributes like that. We talked about the alpha sigma thing, and I hate the whole idea of alpha male. That's not really what this thing is about. But to me, it's about the best in you. And that not only do we have, not only should we have a tribe or a pack of other men around us and people around us who can care and kind of keep us in check, but that we internally have our own little set. We got our own little crew in there. And the one that's in charge, better be the healthy one. And you've always had this wise person in you, I'm sure. And now you've let him take command of all the other parts of you. And you've kind of let this dominant, this loving, this loyal person show up. I could tell when I saw you with your kids. I could tell you when you saw, your grandma and grandpa. I could tell what happens, when you said goodbye to people. I could tell how you spoke on the phone. I could tell how you drove the car. Just so many cool things. This dude's fresh out of prison. He's got a job working, out there as a contractor. And I said, hey, let me buy you a pair of boots. And he said, "No, man, I don't want to take anything. I don't want to be that person." And maybe in the past he would have said, "Hell yeah, I'll take whatever you can give me. How about some of these too?" But I just noticed all this maturing, man. It's inspiring to me. I realize as we get older, I'm not even that much older than you. I think what year were you born? 85?
87.
87. So I'm only 12 years older than you. So although you're my nephew, you're kind of catching me, damn it. You're catching me with all this wisdom and understanding. You've had a lot of time to write. I'm probably going to ask Andy to help with some writing, some written material. Also remind me, and I want you to help me figure out how we can get our podcast into prisons. The whole thing is about, being a better man, and no excuses, alpha up. That's the kind of the little tagline. And to me, that's where you are. We kind of started tonight talking about some of your trauma, some of the unfortunate things that you've been through, and those are contextual. That history is important. It's relevant to, the challenges that you had. You're not using any excuses anymore. That's what I notice about you. You're not, there's like no blame. You're saying I've really truly taken responsibility. And I think right now, man, you're embodying all those things. I saw it. I could tell in your voice. I could tell in your vocabulary. I could tell in the things that you notice and the things you comment on, that you're just tuned in like never before. I want to see you continue to progress. I love you, man. I really appreciate your part of this conversation and your excitement for what we're doing. I want to get you involved as much as I can. And tell us real quick, just to wrap us up, what do you plan on doing? You going to be training any dogs, or you got other hopes, dreams that you're pursuing?
Yeah, man. So I've only been out of prison for 4 weeks. So this week and last week, I got signed up with 2 rescues and 2 animal shelters. I took on my first dog this week from one of the shelters. She's an abused Malamute, Alaskan Malamute, and they don't have a behaviorist in the area right now at all. And on September 9th, I get to go to Idaho State University to their testing center to take my national accreditation tests to be able to, have the official title as a canine behaviorist.
Wow.
And so I'll officially be a clinical social worker for the dogs. So. But no, it'll be cool, man. I'm involved with 2 nonprofits right now. I'm just helping them wherever I can. I got a lot of stuff going on in general, just trying to establish my life a little bit. But as far as the dogs go, eventually I will be offering my services, professionally. But right now, I'm making sure that, kind of like with this whole transition in general, I broke myself down to the, bare bones, emotionally, physically, mentally, in the beginning of this journey, and built my foundation as solid as I could, laid one brick at a time, and that's kind of what I'm doing now in the foundation of my life and my social life and familial life, is I'm just laying one brick at a time. So within the next 6 months, I'll probably be offering my services for pay. But right now, I'm just helping out the damaged dogs at the shelter voluntarily, just to help. There's I do have a client that I'm going to teach their dog how to paddleboard. That's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Plus there's a lot to it, man. There's, I got to find the right insurances and stuff like that. Like, I already have my insurance, for being a contractor, but, they want 5 times the amount of money for the same type of coverage to be a dog trainer. So,
hey, listen, man, I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but we have a little small scholarship fund. And let me just tell you about it real quick. So a few years ago, this guy got the Father of the Year award, and then another guy with the Man of the Year award at the end of the year. I would give him like a little $100 gift card, like a Visa gift card or whatever. And the idea was for tools, or for if there's anybody who's apprenticing, or somebody who's, just kind of getting started on something or whatever. One guy was actually a therapist, and he got a donation to help him pay for the exam that he had to take, the board certified exam. And if there's anything you think of like that, man, you're exactly the kind of person that I would like to, throw some of that at. Some people have just donated. So it would be a small amount, but if there are little things that could help you with what you're doing, let me know, man. I'll run it by a few guys in our committee, and just, maybe we can send you a couple $100 for some kind of materials or something that might be helpful for you. But I've got a feeling this ain't going to be the last we're going to hear of you. You're just you're just well spoken. You have a good manner about you. Love the discipline and the way you've talked about, how you've really kind of had to create yourself from scratch. I love you talk about the letters, the writing that you've done. There's so much work that you've done to really shift who you are fundamentally to this healthy guy.
Yeah, man. So what?
Any last words you want to share?
No, I'm good. I did remember, I sent you a text like 2 weeks ago, and I forgot to bring it up, but what you just said reminded me about it. So I wrote that book, and I wrote 2 books. I don't know if you'll cut this shit out or not, but so one of them is called Guns, Drugs, and Cinnamon Rolls, and it's like a memoir, right? And I added to that this last time with the lessons learned, like you just said, like just putting in the work and stuff. And then the other one's called Brushstrokes, how all of our lives are like a canvas, and then every decision we make is one single brushstroke. And by the end of it, you're going to be happy with what it looks like. And you were you were like the core of that thought because of all of your painting that you've done. And I always remembered that one painting you did, and I don't know who has it, if it's Jim Betray or I don't know, but it was a rose. Do you remember that? Or not a rose, it was a martini glass. Is that what it was?
With some cherries in it or something, maybe?
Yeah, with the cherries in it. Yeah. So yeah, man. So I had an artist in prison draw me a cover for my book called Brushstrokes, and it's on the back, it's a rose. And I was like, no, that can't be right. That's like from Beauty and the Beast or some shit. and then so I was like, it's a martini glass with olives in it. And so he drew me a martini glass with circles, and he never finished it. And that's what I was going to ask you the other day, is what your painting was, because
yeah, it was cherries. I think I might have done that one in high school.
It was ice and cherries.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a pretty good one. I don't even know where that is. I don't know who's got it now. I don't know who's
I think Jim Petray has it.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, yeah, man. So like, I wish my books were done. I'd give a shout out for my books.
Hey, dude. I mean, you can self-publish and stuff now. Like, I mean, I ain't trying to commit myself to reading a bunch of extra stuff. It's just I don't have the time, but I'll help you get it published if it's ready to roll.
I wish. I gotta find an editor.
Oh, you could do that, man. You could do that easy. I'll get you set up with I'll help you out with that. Anyway, yeah. Dude, thank you so much. You guys, the reason I have him here is because he did it all wrong, and then he stopped. He knew his limitation. He asked to go back into a situation that could help him. He knew he needed some time, and he took time, and he changed his attitude. He changed his actions. And as you can see, he's changed his attributes. What a dude. What a man. I respect you a ton. I know you're not a perfect human, but man, you've just really come a long way. And I'm glad that, that so few people ever turn it around, and you've done something here. And I want to stay connected with you like we never have before. And I think we're onto something here talking about this stuff. So thanks, you guys. Appreciate you being with us. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, check us out there, Alpha Quorum. I think it's facebook.com/groups/Alpha Quorum, but you can find that through some of our other links. We're going to continue working to set up some like Zoom groups and lots of different things, lots of different ideas. I just haven't had the ability to execute. I'm probably going to use Andy here to help me create some things like that and get some things going. So thank you so much, you guys. Until next time, no excuses. Alpha up.
If you're a man that controls his own destiny, a man that is always in the pursuit of being better, you are in the right place. You are responsible. You are strong. You are a leader. You are a force for good. Gentlemen, you are the Alpha, and this is the Alpha Quorum.